and we were looking at it in lab mode. If we go into custom mode, this is the one that's probably the most used with students. You can select what tiles you want the student to actually see. So right now, face, track, we'll go shaft and arc. So now the player can only get access to the data that I want them to see, so you avoid them getting overly cognate or thinking too much about what they're trying to do within their stroke. Sometimes as a coach, you don't want them to have access to all this data. So the nice thing about the custom mode is, let's say I just want the player to focus on face. Excuse me. I can just select face, and that'll be the only data that they receive information on. Green mode, this gives you real-time feedback as to what the putter is actually doing. So I've used this with players when, let's say, they have a interesting setup and the putter is not resting correctly, it's not at its correct lie angle. They can use this information. It'll, in real time, the numbers will be changing until they kind of hit the lie angle that you want them to, or if they have too much forward press or whatever the case might be, you can use that information as well. It does have a target mode. So like I said, lab mode is taking that last reference frame from impact and comparing, or from address and comparing it to impact, whereas target mode, you can actually calibrate a target line, and you can use that target line to get all your data. So it would take wherever that intended target is relative to where the putter faces at impact. You can get all that information as well. So we'll be doing a video and putting that on YouTube as well, explaining that process. And that's a really nice thing to use, especially when you're doing putter fittings, so you can actually help a player understand where they're aiming. Because if you're doing a fitting, you want to know how the different hosels or the different sight lines, different head designs, how all those things are influencing a player's ability to aim. So the target mode is a really nice thing when you're doing fittings. I've used it for coaching as well, but it's something I've definitely used for fittings. Practice mode, this is something that honestly I haven't gotten too much into, but basically when a player hits a putt, you're going to be able to tell the software where the ball finished. And it's kind of a nice way you can get kind of capture a dispersion, if you will, of where the balls are finishing relative to the hole. So that's a nice tool to use. Like I said, I haven't used that a ton. The main one that I've been excited about that they came out with recently is the protocol mode. And so the protocol mode is really nice. If there's a test that you want to put a player through, if there's something specific that you tend to do when you get a new student, or if you're doing a fitting, anything like that, you can actually create this protocol and have the player go through this setting. Ian, how are we on time?
I think we're good.
Okay.
11:25 now. So we started about 30 minutes. Okay. So a couple more minutes.
Perfect. All right. So the protocol mode is nice because you can choose the distance of the putt. Let's say the first putt is going to be from 9 feet. Let's say it's a flat putt. It's going to generate that one. I'm going to add a second putt. Let's say this one's from 12 feet. And I'm going to say this one is downhill at 2%. I can actually create however many putts I want, 9-hole putting course, whatever the case might be. And I can choose how many putts they're going to hit from each location. And they can go through this test. And I can create a collective data. So again, going back to the reasons why we like this product, you can actually capture data in context. So even if I'm on a practice screen, I can make it more representative of what I would see on a golf course, where I can have them hit a shorter putt, then I can have them hit a longer putt. I can have them then go back to a putt that breaks from right to left, a putt that breaks left to right. And I can collect all this data and I can look at it and I can really get a better idea of what the player's tendencies are on a left to right, right to left, downhill, uphill, all that stuff. So the protocol mode's a really nice thing.
Hey, Arick, just so you know, I just got a notification from Zoom saying lifted the 40-minute limit. So you don't have to rush.
Beautiful. We thought we had a 40-minute time limit. It sounds like we have been blessed with the ability to go longer. Cool. So so that's a nice thing as well. Sorry, we were just looking at those. So it does give you tempo. A lot of people are interested in the tempo. So it gives you tempo of the player. So in the top corner here, we have player, or we can go optimal. So the player, there's two different ones, address and takeaway. Address is ultimately measuring when the handle starts to move, so when the grip starts to move, whereas takeaway is measuring when the head of the club itself starts to move. So someone like Jordan Spieth, who kind of has this excessive forward shaft lean to start the stroke, that's where you would see those two numbers start to change from address to takeaway. is somebody that has kind of a different tempo in what the handle's doing is compared to what the head's doing, or relative to what the head's doing. You can play auditory sounds so they can kind of hear what's going on there. I don't know if that's going to play because we have the speaker set to me being able to talk, but there is a way to have the sound playing. You can change kind of the way that you want that to be presented. When you want to look at all the data, click on the bottom right-hand corner. These are all the strokes that have been collected. So over time, there's a lot of data that you're obviously going to have. So it's really nice to use some of the features within Capto to organize that data. So if I go back to putt, and I can go stroke session, I can start a new session, title it whatever I want to. When I click on the tree in the top corner here, you're going to see all the different sessions that you started. So then I can only look at that data. So if you're working with a new student, you might start a session called assessment and then post-intervention, whatever the case might be. So then it's really easy to compare the data from lesson 1 to lesson 10 kind of thing, so you don't get too bogged down and trying to sort through all this data. Really easy too if you want to look at a group of strokes. So let's just look at these 6. I'm going to hit select all. I can actually average out all 6 of these strokes. I can look at the standard deviations of them as well, so I can see the consistency. So this is a great way to really get a full perspective as to what the player is doing throughout a group of putts. And again, same thing, you can scroll through this, but you'll notice this kind of little silver outline around the blue. That is showing that standard deviation, so the range that a player would fall within. So the further apart those get, the more variance there is within a player's stroke. So that is nice. You can create a report, export that, send it to the player, anything like that. And that's really simple as well. Settings, not a whole lot that we need to really cover in here, other than knowing that the data manager, that is where you can import and export data between multiple devices. So if you want to export a certain player, let's say I want to export myself, click on myself, and then I would just go export player. I'd go onto whatever other device I'm using. Let's say I'm going onto my phone. I'd go into the same setting, and I would go import player. I'd go to the cloud, and then once I log in, I can then see all the players. So these are the players that are also on one of my other devices. I can click on that, and I can actually import all that data and get all their stroke information in here as well. It updates really frequently, which is nice. When you log into the home screen, you'll get a notification if there is an update. Capto is great about taking suggestions. If there's something that you want to see differently, whether it's a different data point or you want something displayed differently, you can reach out to ourselves. We'll pass on the message to the development team at Capto in Italy, and they come up with updates pretty frequently. When you purchase a Capto, the first year, the subscription is included, which is nice. Ian will talk about that here in a second. He'll dive into kind of the sales information a little bit more on